Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the Relentless Geekery.
Oh, you mean the crisp efficiency of getting the full screen view without a troublesome button?
Yep.
I know what you're trying to say, yeah.
I think I was able to find it and get here first. So what say whatever you like.
All right. I'm sure that'll be part of tonight's discussion. We are indeed on both Mac and Windows. And so what is easy, medium, hard about each of those platforms?
Which actually is completely different than it was like 20 years ago.
And that's true too. With everything, I mean, we're kind of already getting into it. It doesn't matter so much what platform you're on. It matters you're on a browser. You know what I mean? Browsers have made everything agnostic. So many apps are now multi-platform, and there's very, very few differences. The things that I occasionally run into are, wow, I have exactly this font in Word on both Mac and Windows, but it prints differently slightly because somewhere deep inside the PostScript file, the metrics are slightly different, and it changes the leading, it changes the spacing, whatever might be going on there. And almost like I don't know how to resolve it. Do I just like pick a different font that really is perfectly compatible?
What program
What
program are you using? Is that Word?
Yes, Word is one of the ones that I've seen have slightly different prints based on whether you're Mac or Windows.
Really
exactly.
Because some of the better ones, which I thought Word did, is you can use it without even having the right font, and it would keep whatever font you tell it. But
right, that it actually bundles that.
Yeah.
And also what I've noticed is that even if you're in Word, depending on what printer you're going to, it's aware of what loaded standard font sets an HP versus an Epson versus a Brother has, and it does some different font, whatever it does to rasterize everything to get to the final print, it does slightly different things. Never criminally, like the things that happen in Word that are criminal are where you're working with an outline and you try to change something and all of a sudden everything kind of like gets slurped into another world. You know what I mean? It totally changes the format more.
Is that
than
an official Mac term?
It's slurped into another world, exactly. Okay.
We ready to start?
Oh, are we ready? Let's see, where's our...
I guess it's not quite.
We'll give folks a couple minutes of time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I was going to say just.
I've always been of the opinion that we shouldn't make 17 people wait for the 3 people that couldn't find the join button like I couldn't. Hey everyone, welcome to our session.
This meeting is being recorded.
There we go. So let me continue. Thank you so much for coming. Let me introduce my partner in our Relentless Geekery podcast, Stephen Schneider.
Hey everybody.
Yep. We've been doing this for just more than a year now. Woo-hoo. We started about a year ago with every week we talk about all things geeky. We made a huge outline, a big list of all the things we wanted to get to, and as you might imagine, we've gotten to some of that. But every week there seems to be new topics coming along. So it's technology, it's movies and television and books and comic books and magazines. It's I guess a big kind of a Venn diagram crossover with Mensa, because so many of the things that we care about and are passionate about, we find that many Mensans are as well. And it's a delight to like share something that we like with someone that hasn't heard of it before. One of the joys of Mensa is turning people on to, you've not seen this series? Oh, it's really good, and things like that. So what we were asked to do tonight, I think, was about home offices, because we, as you might imagine from this last year of COVID and isolation thereby, we both have home offices, but we really kind of kept getting better and better about how do we make it so that we don't have any dropouts during our podcast. We get good video, good sound, good resolution and stuff like that. So, Stephen, what would be your opening statement about the joy of your home office?
Oh, geez, the joy, absolutely everything. I think the best part of having the home office and working from home is decorating. I mean, look behind me. I've got Star Wars. I've got Raiders. I've got Def Leppard. I mean, the before little cubicle that I worked in before, we couldn't really decorate. We had to keep it looking nice. And now all you got to do is drop a green screen, and you can have any background you want to cover up the pictures. So.
Yes, and in fact, instead of showing off I have a home office in my attic, Skynet, where I do have similar things on the walls, big bright walls and stuff. But I went with my Star Wars backdrop, trying to, I don't know, just class it up a little bit, But so one thing I've discovered is that the world of technology makes it really easy for you to have a ton of power and a ton of, like, everything you might have had in the big office before, I've been able to duplicate at home. I've got, the computer with a good network connection that it really can get me anywhere that I need to go. And I have multiple monitors so that I regularly have multiple screens open for, I'm working on this, but I got to keep track of my appointments or my web browser or my investments or whatever else it might be.
Playlist.
Yeah, my playlist. In fact, that's another thing. One of the joys of working from home is I almost always have music on. It really does help me concentrate and get through my day and find joy. And so instead of having to keep it like headphones only and maybe muted in the background when I had my office at Progressive Insurance or whatever, this way I can. And Colleen and I, she also works from a home office and she does retirement planning. Well, I can crank my Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and she doesn't have to worry about explaining to a client why the Great Gates of Kiev are coming down the stairs or something like that. So, okay.
And the best thing for me, and where I live, Cleveland's like an hour away. So the corporate job I had before I started working from home was an hour and 10-minute drive one way. So that was like 2.5 hours every day of going out to the car, driving through traffic in all weather when it was dark. And yeah, I listened to some audiobooks, and other things, but 2.5 hours every day was wasted.
It was just to you, exactly.
Yeah. So even if I worked 9 hours at my job, but from home, I'm still getting more time to myself. And that's important.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I was determined to make my home office be able to handle everything was exactly that. When I worked with various different clients on consulting assignments, I wanted to make sure, I am both, though I am on my Mac Mini as my main box, I run Parallels emulation, so I can do everything with Windows and multiple versions of Windows. So when I have to test something that might have to run in different browsers and different versions of Windows in different browsers, I really can create those emulated environments and not have to have an array of machines that I'm doing that with. So that has absolutely improved, over the course of these last 25 years. I mean, I remember using PC Anywhere and various different things to be able to get into their site from elsewise. And nowadays, it's really easy to attach to everything and look like whatever you need to in order to be compatible with whatever environment you've set up, especially development environments and stuff like that. Or the joy of this video casting is incredible. Boy, I've been doing video casting for a long time, and it used to be just so choppy, and so you had to go to a specific room in the building that was designed exactly for that, and all of our, we've learned how to do the hand raising to be acknowledged.
Hardware that used to cost hundreds of dollars, now you get a mic for $50, a little video camera for $50, and your regular internet. I mean, the ease has just, not just because of COVID. I mean, it's really come a long way. And you were talking earlier about it doesn't really matter Mac or Windows, and it really doesn't, because most things are browser based, it seems, and even then, just about every bit of software is shared, and I have everything. There's the first tip. If you go work from home, put everything in the cloud. Save all your stuff into the cloud, because
you can get to it anywhere you need.
You need to. Because if we were talking about the power going out, there have been many times I have to get work done. The power goes out. So I used to have to drive to McDonald's with my laptop and sit there ordering so I could keep working. But I could, because all my stuff was in the cloud. I could just grab it and keep going. And that's important for working from home nowadays, is that flexibility. You don't have to worry about the thumb drives and all that.
In fact, it's kind of funny. Many of the hard-fought skills that I learned over the last 20 years about how to make sure you had every single adapter that you might need in order to tie into their video or their sound system, or that you can't necessarily count on their net connection. So I have, my phone can be a hotspot and all that kind of stuff. And some of those things are still very useful. You know, like I regularly present at I speak at Kent State University. I speak at local libraries on comic books, on Mad Magazine, on things like this. And you try to coordinate beforehand exactly what kind of environment you're going to have so you can just tie right in. But sometimes whatever you were told isn't the truth, and you need to be able to have that elegant fallback. You know what I mean? You can't just say, well, now I can't do it. You have to say, well, I can do it, but the video is going to be a little choppier, or I'm going to, whatever. I still have my laptop bag that I carry around with me, my virtual office, if you will, is my whole bag of tricks. It really does have every single video, from HDMI to VGA to MOUSE. It's got every how to go from USB C3 to all of that, just so you can put your thumb drive in if you have to. You can attach to the net and get your cloud-based presentation going and stuff like that. It's I haven't had a total disaster presentation where, I forgot to sacrifice the goat to the demo gods and now they won't let me run. I haven't had that in a long, long time because we got so good at being defensive.
And even then, like you, I would always have a presentation on my laptop. I'd have it on a thumb drive, and I'd have it burnt to a DVD.
Redundancy.
Yeah,
exactly.
Redundancy
to make sure. That's right.
But lately, it's just, well, as long as I can get on Wi-Fi, I can download it because I have it in the cloud. I mean, cloud services have just been a godsend over the last decade.
Exactly. And fast enough. It used to be that if you had to do a big download, you would set it to go a half hour before the presentation because otherwise you might not have it. So one of the things that the joy of working in technology is that it keeps on getting better and better and for cheaper and cheaper, but there's the overhead of being aware of what's currently available, and you're always trying to find the balance between, I want to look all snazzy and current, but I don't want it to have it be that they couldn't use it similarly because I'm kind of showing off or something like that. So as everything has switched to smartphones, I've done presentations off of just my phone, but then that's another adapter to have to worry about, whether it's your Lightning or USB 3 or something like that. And the trying to make it that I don't want to, for instance, I'm an older guy, I'm 60s, and I don't live off of my phone. I still really, my preferred environment is my multi-monitor setup and a real keyboard for typing and stuff like that. And so I don't want it to look as if, oh no, I run my entire life off my phone. I do my DJing from here. I do my presenting from here. You know what I mean? I kind of don't want to fake it. I try to have it that they can see I can do all these things, but here's my preferred.
But let me jump on that even too, because more and more things are across the board, and you can run things right off your phone. You can Bluetooth right into it, or do a Chromecast and connect to a projector, or even a TV. Just being on the same network, or even just being within 50 feet. And one of the things I've been looking at, talking about, is for parents and teaching your kids now to get them ready for the workforce, because these kids are growing up with phones. They're used to phones. So just because we're old, we have biases against that. But honestly, these kids are going to be able to run whole businesses right from their phone and do nothing else.
Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs has actually said the way that he untethered himself from having to go into a studio and be in front of a camera was he just has a little stand for his smartphone and sets it up, and he broadcasts from Bangkok. It's not long all the places in the United States that he did his things from. Now it's everywhere in the world, and that the quality of signal, the quality of equipment is so much technology is indistinguishable from magic if it's significantly advanced. And that's what he's got now is his portable studio, if you will. Things that used to cost $100,000, then $10,000. Right. Now he's got $1,000, smartphone, and he's good to go. So it's heartening to see people really, really cut the cord, really say, I'm going to use this no matter where I go. I'm committing to it. And then the tales of what you had to do that are themselves worthwhile, because some people are thinking about doing that as well. They kind of want to find out, oh wow, you had to get to Kuala Lumpur before you couldn't get, the adapter to charge your phone because they have a different electrical standard. It wasn't
Right.
really signal. It wasn't Wi-Fi. It was anyway. So
The recording has stopped.
Oh, hey, our recording stopped.
But from my experience, I'm in real estate, and I'm like 50-something years old. So yeah, I could be like, I deal with baby boomers, and they don't want to get on the phone. They don't even have email addresses or bank accounts. It's really ridiculous, friends.
yeah.
But anything else I'm trying to say is that
This meeting is being recorded.
It's forcing me to have to do my business successful. I don't want to, but I'm not a ham. I don't like doing videos. I'm on the call because I know I have the practice I need to be. And having conversations, and I do Facebook Live and all of this. So, I was with a prior agency before, and they were like coaching us to be old school when we call. Like, nobody uses the phone anymore. What's that for? And they told us not to do Facebook. They thought it was a joke. But now with a new agency that actually sells the most home solutions, and
Yeah.
I'm forced to do social media. I have to, like, create campaigns, send emails, and be out there on the web. And
Well, yeah. A lot of what they're finding out is that there really are efficiencies to be gained, and sometimes it isn't just a matter of preference. It's that they set a new standard, especially if you've got, like, so I am an investor nowadays. You know what I mean? I've really taken our 401k plans and have been determined to get a little more cushion in our retirement, and I've done okay. But what you do when learning about those companies, for instance, Zillow and Redfin, both, the reason that they're now very powerful real estate alternatives is because they use disruptive tech to get rid of all the old stuff you might remember from Remax and listing services and all the restrictions they used to have, and in order to get their sales staff and their support staff to embrace that new standard, to be disruptive, they're demanding of all their people, we don't want you to look at all like Remax with a big book, and even if you're very personable, even if you've been out on the road and you're really good at selling a house, what we want you to do is use our tools, because that's part of our brand, is to have the 3D walkthrough that is not you walking them through the house. We're going to capture this and post it on the web, and people can kind of do it in their own time instead of having to make an appointment. So, and boy, that's everything, isn't it? I mean, medical technology and entertainment technology and real estate, they're all being impacted by
all of it.
Yep.
yeah. So,
And that's one of the things I've been involved with is wanting to do more talks with parents to get their kids right. Because I don't think parents, even in their 30s, 40s, know what's coming in the future. And kids are being exposed to it. And it's all going to change. A lot of what we're talking about now is going to be totally irrelevant 10 to 20 years from now. Being able to connect, being able to use the software. Because, again, everybody's starting to do it, so these problems are just going to get solved.
Right.
It's just where it is right now, state of the industry. But I think the
kids, recording has stopped.
Oh, there goes the recording again.
Yeah. I think what happens is whenever we don't have anybody from the committee on the call, and here's Jerry again, that they kind of take the recording with them when they go and they come back.
Yeah.
So,
well, we'll do what we'll do what we can.
It'll be a little bit fragmented.
That's pretty typical.
Okay.
But what's happening is things are changing a lot because
this meeting
of COVID,
is being recorded.
But they were changing anyway, and I think the kids are going to be seeing it, but the parents and adults and us old people, we're not going to be totally getting it. And
I tell you what they're seeing. They're seeing videos. They're not looking at the data. They're not looking at the studies. They're watching Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and they're getting experiential advice instead of the reality.
Right. But go ahead.
No, one of the reasons that I still resist that to a certain extent, and this is, we're all Menson, so we get to have this Menson conversation. When I watch a video, I have to kind of watch it in real time. I have to watch it with whatever the person that put together the video did for pacing. If I read much smarter, more quickly than your average bear. And so I like the fact that I can get kind of an advantage over how much information I can take in, and the ability to move among multiple sources instead of only being watching one video at a time. Maybe people really do watch the wall of monitors like Ozymandias and the Watchmen. You know what I mean? And let's see. I'm seeing that I'm going to leave the breakout room in 33 seconds. So apparently we have some.
Hours.
Uh-oh.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay,
Are we back?
Are we back in the main room or the breakout room? Okay, I'm now in a break. Coming back in. All right, I guess we're kind of an early session, so we're being the guinea pig for this.
So,
but oh boy, Jerry, this isn't good.
One of the problems with working from home and working with people across the country is all the different weather.
Exactly. There we go.
Well, let me give you an example, because my other podcast where I interview authors, I interviewed this lady that lives in Florida. She's a single mom. She has, she's mid-30s or so, but she does comedy and stand-up comedy. But she also writes books, and she's been producing her own movies and videos for a YouTube channel based on those books. And she does art and sells them online and does it all through her phone. So this is where the future of home work, working from home and the workforce in general.
This meeting is being recorded.
This is where it's going. We're just.
Oh no.
Yep.
This is Central Texas.
Well, yeah, you said some very cool, pithy things there, Stephen, and I think we're not going to catch it all.
Yeah, that's okay.
We will have a session for the 20 of us, and we will not worry about this necessarily being preserved for the website. Yeah. So, okay, 24 of us.
So Alan, let's ask that. We've talked about it. What are the big pieces of software? Because obviously working from home involves software. Before, if you had a phone, you might have been able to be a sales guy and work from home. But nowadays, you can do almost anything from your main job at home. The computers are as powerful. You can hook into the network and all that. So what are some of the software that you use to get your work done, get your jobs done?
So we mentioned browsers. So first of all, I have like pretty much every browser. I think I use Safari for Mac the most because it integrates the best with all of everything else I do on my Mac.
That's funny because some of the work I do, Safari is the hardest to get working with some of the apps I've done.
And it's kind of what I've discovered is, because I actually do so much coding as we moved amongst CSS and HTML4 and 5 and so forth, the reason that Apple is sometimes persnickety is because it really adheres to standards well, instead of having their own extensions, their own particular code libraries, or maybe let's say a foundation class and an API. Sorry to geek it up for a moment. And that when you start using something besides it, if you stay within either Chrome or Firefox or Edge or Opera or any number of other browsers, you can get things to work really well in their environment, but they will have the same, I guess, not incompatibilities, but just strengths and weaknesses based on, let's see, in Safari, for instance, one of the things I've noticed is I often buy tickets for concerts, and Ticketmaster, for whatever reason, uses a particular thing that doesn't adhere to HTML5 standards. So I'll get like 2/3 of the way through, I've selected tickets.
The recording has stopped.
And I go to try to buy them, and then I can't bring up the pop-up that's going to let me buy the tickets. And I'm watching my clock tick down saying, oh, those good tickets you got because you signed in early and you really want to go to see, They Might Be Giants. You're about to lose those because now you have to go into Chrome or Firefox that is compatible. And from pain, I've learned enough times to not even start in Safari. I always go to somewhere else. But it's so that I try to stay in a place where I've got. The reason I like Safari also is that it has a number of extensions that I make use of, like Honey for shopping, or a whole bunch of stuff to keep crap out of my experience. I make sure that I have an ad blocker in place, and it checks for malware and things like that. I have that kind of thing where my time is my most valuable resource, and I really hate it.
So there's a home working tip right there. Chrome is bad for this. Don't put so many extensions on that it takes over your screen, takes over your browser. Because if you look at memory management, Chrome uses so much memory, and the more plugins you put on, the slower it gets. And you can turn those off. You can keep them installed, but turn them off until you need it and turn it on. So there's a tip from my
I've done exactly that dance where when I first found you could do it, I threw everything in there. I could use this, and this, and this, and this. And then when you saw yourself grinding to a halt or stuttering because things were in conflict with each other, I have done a little bit of cleaning out and stuff like that. I regularly use the Microsoft Office suite. I know that there are freeware alternatives, you know what I mean, where you really can get almost all the functionality. And in fact, I use Microsoft more often than I use the Apple suite of Keynote and so forth. But if you're looking for, like, I don't know, the lingua franca of the Office world, it really is Microsoft Office for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, whatever they might be. I can always save documents kind of in a downwards direction where there'll be less of everything that Microsoft had, but still compatible. And that's especially, like, I don't know, I was LOCSEC in Cleveland area Mensa, and we regularly had people that had various different machines and versions of things. And I was always the one that had to say, okay, I'm going to save it as a docx for you instead of a docx, because you can't handle the most current version. Sometimes, you know, Mensans are stubborn. They will get their money's worth out of technology, but they're like 6 versions behind the current one.
Right.
It's like, well, you know, don't make me save it in abacus format. At least give me...
I work every day with legacy stuff, a lot of legacy stuff.
Yes.
And I mostly work in the Linux world. And one of the things we found is backwards compatibility with Microsoft is definitely limited.
True.
And so, I mean, when you want stuff that's 20 years old, and some of the stuff I'm using is 54 years old, you really want to stick to some sort of very universal standard. And ASCII text is about one of the best things.
That's unfortunately, that's also incredibly limited. You know, once you fall back to ASCII or EBCDIC for that matter, you really are just talking, there's no formatting embedded, there's no fonts embedded, there's no PDF type things where you can make a document be a document instead of just, and not even like proportional fonts. You're talking about having monospaced fonts. So as much as I see the need for certain environments to have that, to have the lowest common denominator standard, boy, the lowest common denominator standard is like going back to including printer control codes in a Lotus 123 document. You know what I mean? It's just terrible.
But we still use a lot of text. We use a little bit of everything. We're still running Turbo Pascal.
See, I love that environment, but I loved it 30 years ago.
I mean, we're still running, we were running until very recently, until the end of last year, we were still using DOS for things. So, I mean, you have to consider in the future that you want to keep old stuff, even if it's an old format like ASCII text. That's a lot better than nothing.
I agree. You know what I mean? I don't know that I can think of anything offhand. I know, for instance, also in the world of music, there really are multiple compression schemes, multiple formats, and I always keep whatever I can in the most rich format that I can, that I still have enough room to hold everything, because I really don't like to have anything MP3 sound choppy or something like that, so I'll hold it in a lossless format. Well, that's also then you're going to be dependent on what things did those encoders and decoders. And sorry, we might be geeking up a little bit too much. It is an overall standard to say you really need to think about, if you're going to have archive quality versus just what you're using nowadays, what might be the most universal standard to save it in, so that it doesn't become trapped in an old format or an old, like, I don't know, people still have SideQuest cartridges, right? They still have various different old offline storage that when we moved away from SCSI devices or other standards, you know, like now that everything is USB, it means you can't get to various other things. So I have that kind of, what would you call it? The graveyard of various different things that I don't use anymore. And yet I know I have data that's probably trapped on there. My oldest email, my first collection of music, whatever else it might be. Sometimes I've done the work to find a way to attach the old drive, bring it all forward. Sometimes I just said, you know, I kind of want to resave it in a newer, better format anyway, so I'll go through my CD collection again. And then a year later, I've done that because I have a lot of CDs. But let's see, Stephen, what kind of apps or environment have you found useful for your home office?
Well, I'm glad somebody brought up Linux, because I think the public domain, Linux, and all that world has been great. And like I know for the business I mainly have been working in, it's Word. I mean, they use Word, they use Excel, they use PowerPoint. That's the thing. But I can use Open Office and open every single one of those documents and read them. And it's a great lifesaver to know what other documents are available, because quite often you'll get clients in India or Brazil or something that their government or their company doesn't have the latest stuff, doesn't have updated this, or they're not paying for Word. So you got to be able to tell them, here's how you can read this and open this. And PDFs are another thing, being able to open and read and have different apps that can do that.
Right.
So,
and it would still be editable though, because PDFs are often frozen unless you have the Adobe Acrobat, not the distiller, but the
Yeah, well, there's yes, for the most part, but we'll leave it at that for another discussion. Right. Now, one of the things for working from home that I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'd love to work from home. That'd be so great. I wouldn't have to drive to work. I wouldn't have to deal with the office. And then what happens is they start sleeping in. They take long lunches. They end up putting their feet up watching a couple episodes of this. Well, I can work later. That's the danger of working from home, is you got to be a little disciplined. You got to be able to sit down and get the work done. The good thing is there are times when something needed done and I've stayed up. I've been up till 3 a.m. I've worked weekends. But I can also take off enough time to take the kids to the doctor when needed.
Even that out, exactly.
But we were talking about that a little bit, Alan. That's the freedom, but you have to have the responsibility to be able to handle it, because it can definitely fool some people. They're like, oh, that'd be great. And then they, not picking on them or anything, my son Jason has been homeschooling this year, which is something he's never done before. And he's having a really tough time with it. He's just not cut out to be able to sit there and do the homeschooling. And it's the same with adults. A lot of times they really need that office environment to work from. So I think in the future, we're going to get some hybrid something where more people are going to be working from home, but there's going to be some mixed thing of office and home or something like that too. I think that's going to change.
Yeah. Like as I mentioned, Colleen and I are both at home and because of COVID, but she actually has been working from home for a while because her company is based out of Indianapolis, and the satellite office that they had here, they dispersed it when the salesman that was based out of here was no longer going to be here, and that was the main reason for having that was professional appearance sales presentations, whatever else it might be. So I have always loved working. Much as you said, according to my own schedule, a lot of what I do is focusing, and that it isn't always that I focus from 8 to 5. That sometimes I want to stay up late when I'm getting no more interruptions, or I want to get up first thing in the morning because an idea comes to me and I got to see if I can make this work out in code. Colleen really doesn't like working from home as much because she is an amazingly responsible person, and as long as she's got pretty much anything on her to-do list, she often talks about, well, I just want to get this off my conscience. Well, you can't do that if it means you're going to work until 8 and 9 and 10 every night. You can't let that work life take over your life. So, part of the discipline is not only being able to apply yourself when necessary, but also being able to step away and give yourself a life besides I'm always on call. People always can reach me. And if your commute is 2 steps down the stairs, into the family room,
right?
Just that's been much more her problem, is being super responsible. Whereas I do a little bit of life compartmentalization, I guess, that it's, I determine when I work and when I don't. So,
but at least you get better coffee working from home. So I'll give it that.
And that's true.
And one of the good pizza. One of the things I found, and I had to learn this the hard way, because I used to do that. I would work through the evenings. I'd work weekends. I'd work way more hours trying to get, because then it's not a matter of, oh, I'm here for 8 hours. I'm getting paid. If I get my work done or not, I'll be back tomorrow. It turns into, well, every hour I work, I'm getting paid for that hour. If I work 10 hours, I make more. If I work 12, it's like, oh, I got these things to do. What I actually had to start doing, and I use Todoist as the app for scheduling. Okay. Todoist and my calendar, Outlook, Google Calendar, they all do the same. Right. But I actually would schedule in times to sit down and go play some music, or to go play a board game with the kids. And it sounds stupid. It's like you're scheduling in this free time.
Yeah.
But if it was on my schedule, I would go do it and be much more relaxed in doing it.
There you go, because you've already allocated the time.
Right.
And you don't have to feel guilty. Exactly.
Right.
So,
Plus, then I don't have open space. So if I'm working on a project, I'm not like, I've got all day to do this. I can take it easy. And next thing I know, it's midnight and I'm still not done. But if I know I've only got 4 hours before I've got time I got set aside to go spend with the kids, I've got to sit there and work and get that done in those 4 hours.
Yeah.
So it sounds stupid, but it works for me.
Let's talk about this a little bit, because some people, they have an on-call type job where they're continually answering the phones or covering something, and then their life is based on interruptions and kind of clearing the docket, if you will. My life has been much more based on the ability to drop into flow. There's a great book by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi about the act of flow, where you feel like you're the master of your environment, you lose track of time, you're hyper productive while you're in that state. And I very zealously pursue that and guard it when I get there. So part of my home environment is to make sure that I have some isolation. It's just me and my music. I don't have doorbells ringing, or I don't answer my phone. I don't have any things that would kind of like startle me, because the act of reloading what you were working on, thinking, if you're coding, it takes like 20 minutes to get back into all of what you were thinking about. Okay, I want this to happen, and the database is going to access it this way, and then I have to be, you know what I mean? There's overhead. I actually, when I've been in that environment as a consultant at an office site, I would often choose kind of the place that nobody else wanted, because it was away from the crowd, away from the socializing, so you're not as popular. You don't get in on all the cool office conversations.
Oh, yeah, because I was always way popular.
well, if you're witty, if you're funny and pleasant, you can get regularly invited to lunch and stuff like that. And I always went to lunch, but there's a caves and commons way of doing it, right? That you want to be able to go into your cave and actually like put up a sign that says, don't interrupt me unless it's really life important, because I really have to concentrate. But then when you come out and you do the water cooler thing and you're going back and forth to the bathroom or the cafeteria or whatever else it might be, that's when people know that you're up for, random conversations and the chance meeting in the hallway that you still have to have in order to kind of stay abreast of everything that's going on in the company and what the various different teams are doing. So I've tried to duplicate that at home. I don't. Colleen always gets to me interrupt me. I never mind an interruption from her, but she's also not she's gentle about it, as opposed to a phone ringing is interrupted. If you know what I mean, or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's kind of funny. I don't think I isolate myself necessarily, and if you were to look, I regularly make little steps away to go, let's put something on Facebook, let's change the music, whatever else it might be. But those are according to my schedule and my choice,
right,
instead of somebody having summoned me. I love my smartphone. I always hated being on a pager because I hated being summoned. That's just my ego, but my work style as well is that I'm not on call. If you pay me, like you were saying about being a consultant, you pay me for every hour that I work, but you don't pay me for 24 hours a day.
Right.
And so I don't want to be on your pager.
that's another thing. A lot of people right now work for a company, but they're working for that company from home. That's right. Different than working for yourself from home and finding clients. That takes on a whole different aspect, because then you do have to look at your time and what you're charging and getting the job done. I know you're probably the same way. When I would do projects for web, working with designers, doing database stuff, I would almost always quote it on a project basis rather than a time basis, because if I said it's 10 hours, but then it took 15, then I'm either charging them more or I'm losing hours. But if I knew it was going to take between 10 and 15, I'd give them a quote for the 15 hours and then, go on the project basis.
Right.
So that's another skill to learn and
learn how to estimate. And exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. In contrast to, hey, I want to go into flow. I want to immerse myself and kind of lose track of time. What I'm also aware of is that medical science will tell you nowadays that like sitting at your desk constantly is pretty much like being a smoker. It really like hardens your arteries and it makes your muscles lose, tensile strength and stuff like that. So luckily I have another device, the Apple Watch that I wear regularly has interruptions that say, you might want to stand up every hour.
The little guy that
deep breaths. Exactly. And again, it's one of those things that just has a little gentle, beep boop that lets you know. But I regularly take that hint to say, okay, every hour, do I need to go to the washroom? Sure, let's go do that. Do I need to freshen my drink? Get some more ice for my Diet Dr. Pepper, of which I am a hideous addict. Yes, I will.
Go back 2 episodes and watch our podcast. You can see the bin of empty Dr. Pepper bottles. It's on the podcast.
As it topples over onto me. No, that's, let's go check the mail. I like all those little things that I want to get done during the day, instead of them being interruptive. It's more like, okay, every hour, stretch your legs. Colleen and I have learned this. We love road trips. But what you do on a road trip is you don't get in the car and drive to Florida. Every 2 hours, you stop and get a tank and a drink. You know what I mean? You relieve yourself. You walk around a little bit. You get maybe freshen your drink. You just kind of like, oh, there's a world outside our car. And it makes it so your hips don't lock up. And then, you know what I mean? Especially as you get a little bit older, you have to be aware of your body isn't as rugby tough and resilient as it was. I'm not 25 now. And so all those little things about, I don't know, just the little interruptions. Change your focal length. Don't stare at your screen, which is a yard away. You got to get up and walk around a little bit and interact with people a little bit. And so all of this there isn't one way to do it. It's everything to moderation, and find the mix that works for you.
Right.
So,
and because I do work from home now, I don't wear glasses all the time anymore because I had the LASIKs when I had cataracts. But I do got my glasses focal length just right for where my monitors are, because I do have glasses for computer use only. I can't read real well with them. But what you said about the getting up and walking, that's the other great thing about working for yourself, because I can start my day early, work for a couple hours, and stop for breakfast, chat with the kids, take the dog for a nice walk, and then come back, work for a couple more hours. And mentally, that is so much better than sitting in that cubicle going, oh my gosh, when's my next break? And probably like you, and probably like a couple others on here, there are so many times when just getting out for a little walk or doing something different will trigger the answer I've been trying to figure out and solve the problem in the back of my head.
Absolutely.
So,
boy, I remember, again, everybody is the product of all the little bits and pieces they picked up over the course of their life. I remember reading early a quote from Isaac Asimov, a Mensa member. Let's go there. And he used to talk about, when you're having problems with a book that you're writing, he didn't sit there and stare at the typewriter until blood came out of his forehead. He went to the movies. And your mind is so mighty, it will play with it in the background while you're distracting yourself with something else. And 9 times out of 10, while he was walking, while he was seeing the other movie, the eureka moment would occur, and he would be like, now I know how to get my way out of the situation. This is what my characters want to do next.
Yeah.
And so I kind of do that too, is that I give myself that chance for happy accidents, that chance for unfocused time. You and I we were just talking about this a little while back, Stephen, that people have what's called the ghost on the staircase. They're in a conversation, and then later, after the party, they think of, oh, what I should have said was
right.
This. Well, I'm an odd duck in terms of it doesn't occur to me 2 hours later. It occurs to me like 20 seconds later. Somebody in my head, little file clerks, are going through stuff, and they'll pull out something that I couldn't think of. I don't know, what's the name of the planet that the Silver Surfer is from? I knew I had to have that for a culture quest a couple of years ago. And like when we move on in conversation, and then suddenly I'll say, oh, that's Zen Law. And of course, people will give me the look like, Elle, are you okay? What are you talking about? Oh, well, we were talking about this a moment ago. It just took a while for my guys to find it for me.
That's funny. I mean? You say that about the writing, because we've talked a little bit. I've been doing some writing. You wouldn't believe how many storylines and how many plot things I've resolved while driving, and it's really scary. My mind goes totally into another world. I go driving. I literally have missed exits and ended up in the wrong city because I was thinking of something. But I used to do it with database stuff. I'd be stuck on this database design and connection and getting it on the web and the right functionality. And I'm like, okay. And if I had to go get something at the store, I'd go for a drive, leave the radio off, and my brain would take over. Right. And next thing I know, I have it solved.
That's very cool. That the unconscious mind does amazing things, sometimes more creative, and make different kinds of connections than if we're just trying to like force ourselves to think of it. You know what I mean?
Which is something you can't do working in the corporate world. And I mean, it's hard to quantize how important that is to be able to walk away from your desk and say, I solved the problem while I was out feeding the horses. You know?
Right. Yeah, if anything, you kind of need to show the work. You want them to think it was hard, not, oh, yeah, I just come with this happens for me all the time.
Right. Right.
So a little switch in direction, but one of the things I wanted to say that I have absolutely learned is buying equipment and setting yourself up to have your right environment is absolutely investing in yourself, and it's worth it. You know, people will be a little, I don't know, I have 2 monitors and they're high quality because what do I stare at 8-10 hours a day? I don't want to get eye strain. I don't want to get it where I get the raster that starts to, you know, wiggle after a while. My keyboard is like adjustable so that I can try to avoid ever getting a repetitive strain injury. I have a high quality mouse. I have high quality speakers. Everything that I've done, I went shopping for. Not just I went to Costco and bought it, but I like got a copy of Maximum PC and read all about here's the best hard drive and here's the best DVD burner and all those things. And I tend to do things kind of consumer report style. I don't know that I get the best because there's always a premium associated with that. But if you get something that's like third down on the list, you're going to get 90% of the capability for 50% of the money. And that's what I've surrounded myself with. You know, so my monitors are good. All my hard drives that I get, I make sure that I'm getting one that it's not, especially hard drives, you can't ever afford to lose data. You know what I mean? You really can't have, yes, you got to have a good backup drive. You have to have good drives going, even if you have the ability to recover, it's going to take a day out of your schedule. And there's many times that I can't afford that day. So I really try to be judicious about where I put my money so that I am always the one that it's focused on. Am I comfortable doing this? Is my eyesight retained through this? Am I retaining the data that matters to me? It isn't about, oh, they match. They're all the nice blue color. You know what I mean? There's like, you have to kind of get away from the storeman, the salesman at Best Buy or something is trying to sell you something. I tend to piece things together because most components now are very interoperable. There's hardly ever a time that you have to get like a matched set from Best Buy. And I've hardly ever been unhappy with, did I spend too much money on a monitor? No, the fact that I never get eye strain is because I did the shopping, and my LG and my Samsung were, for each of them that I bought at the time, like the best thing you could get for reasonable amounts of money. Rock solid. You know?
And that's one of the changes too over the last 20, 25 years. If you have a Mac, you don't have to buy just the one Mac mouse and the one Mac monitor. You can you have choices, and that's a good thing.
And it really is, like you said, it's not, that might have been when the Mac first came out, probably like 80 to 95, shall we say, that might have been the case, that it was a lesser set of software and stuff like that. But since then, I've never suffered for choice. You know what I mean? I've always been able to either get things that were multiple Mac things, or just find out, you know, when you have a hard drive and it uses, you know, the standard connection, you might have to reformat it for the Mac when you start off, but after that, it's wonderfully compatible. And in fact, the Mac's always been really good about, well, how do they used to say it? Fit in but stand out, or something like that. That they support, you know, FAT, the file access table that DOS and Windows systems used, so you could always do things on your Mac and then just take it and attach it to a Windows system. And it might be that the actual files were compatible or not compatible based on it, but not the whole, you couldn't even read a drive.
Right.
You know, so they that's a very good thing that has also changed when you keep things in the cloud, or when you keep things, everything is interoperable. So just that, the sweeping statement of, it's absolutely worth buying quality stuff.
And I would say, for if you're going to work from home, obviously you've got to be able to use the computer and be comfortable with the computer, whichever system you choose, whether it's Mac, Apple, or Mac or Windows, or even Linux, or, you know, your Android phone. There's another tip: learn the system, go through the settings, play with the settings, click on things. There's a study, I like to say, there's a study that I read that they found that the people who have the least problems with their computers are the people that are not afraid to click buttons and mess with it, because you learn how to use it. You know, open up Word, open up a document, start clicking buttons and see what they do. Because then when you do have a problem, you have an idea of where it is and how to fix it, or all the capabilities that are possible. And especially in Windows, they've been trying to dumb it down even more. And I hate the settings nowadays. But if you go in there, you can find all sorts of things on what you can change with your themes and your displays. And everybody's always talking about, oh, my computer is so old, I got to get a new one. I'm like, well, how old is it? Well, it's 4 years old. The computer I am using right now, running this Zoom, and I've got Chrome open, I've got my Outlook open, it is 11 years old. And all I've upgraded is the hard drive, because the hard drive died at some point. Okay. So it's been the same videos, same CPU, same motherboard, same monitors. I have gotten new mouse and keyboards when they wore out and stuff. So because I go through my settings, I can optimize it. I know what's running. I know what programs are running. Go in to shut things off so they don't load at the startup. So many times when I used to do service calls, I'd look at somebody and they'd have like 500 things running all the time, stuff they don't use.
Without knowing it. Yeah,
exactly. Go into Chrome, see where the extensions are, how to turn them off, how to edit the settings on the extensions. I might have 50 extensions installed, but only 5 of them are active. I go turn the other ones on if I need them. So my system runs, and we've talked about this before, Al. I'm on the verge of getting a new system, but I'm always like, I could probably get another year out of this.
If I just go with a better SSD, it's another thing that I would say is that there really are advances in technology that really are game changers.
Yeah.
And so if you're still running on an older hard drive and you haven't had an SSD yet, it really is 100 times faster. The zippiness of which your files will open and your ability to save things and so forth. I hate to have the computer that I'm waiting on the computer. I want to always be that the computer is my tool. And so everything that I can do for speed, it makes for a more seamless experience. And I really appreciate that. I have like gigabit Ethernet to my home. I think that not everybody might have that. Depends on where you are, what part of the country, what city, and so forth. But once you had a zippy fast net connection, it spoils you. Like, I go to the vault. I've been cataloging my comic books. I go to the vault where I have my laptop and I have my hotspot, and it only gets whatever I can get, like, fifth generation, 5G. Well, it really is that you miss what you have when you don't have it. And so my printer has to turn things out with a certain amount of speed because I just can't go back to ever waiting on a print. And we have mesh Wi-Fi for the house. And again, getting it to where Colleen and I can both have all of our devices working, whatever we need to do, and have it be that you're never waiting on the Wi-Fi. It always looks as if you have, by round robin and whatever they're doing, and they've made it. They continue to advance technology so that it doesn't take me being, alpha geek to figure out exactly how to set your parameters so that it all works. It used to be that you had to go in and know how to run a bridge off of your existing router and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you buy a set of, a mesh set for Wi-Fi, you pretty much give it a name, put in the password, put them around your house. It does all of the coordination around your house for eliminate dead zones, make sure that the 2 bands that it makes use of are being used appropriately so that your throughput is maximized. And I love that. I love the fact that they've taken geeks that used to have to do this individually around. They put all that smarts into this device, and now it's self-configured. So it's kind of like having virtual Steven, virtual Alan, that set your house up so that it works really well. And so again, it's not inexpensive. I know you can get Wi-Fi or signal to your house for like $49.95, and I pay more than that. But again, my most valuable thing is my time, and so for being able to get both great download and great upload speeds and be able to have that bandwidth split between me and Colleen and never worry about that one or the other is slowing each other down, it's just that overhead, I guess, is worth it to me to just commit and then get used to it, get used to right. How wonderful it is to always have the computer your servant, not your ever waiting on the computer.
So here's a Windows tip for users. For a little more speed, a little more use, you can change the cache file for your Windows to be on a different drive than on your C drive. And I actually have a totally separate, smaller SSD that I have my cache file on, and then I have my C drive. And while all my software is installed, it's on the C drive, but I have my libraries and my documents on a totally separate drive. So if my C drive blows up right now, all I got to do is get another drive, reinstall Windows, and everything is still there, except for reinstalling software. I have tried to install software so it installs to another drive and it just causes too many problems. So that I haven't been able to get around. But again, almost everything I have my keys for, and I could just re-download it, reinstall it, and I'm good to go. So that's my little setup tip.
That's a great one. I mean, one of the things, remember Stephen Covey had a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, like now, 30 years ago or something like that. But one of the things it talked about was that sharpen the saw, number 7, I think, that it isn't only that you have what you're working on and how important it is and being able to prioritize and so forth. It's also just dedicate some time to getting better at the tools you're making use of and examining your environment to see if there's anything you might want to change about it. So that kind of thing, being able to configure, hey, when an SSD became available, solid state drive, for those who don't know, that is that much faster than a hard drive, wow, all the overhead of computer doing its caching, doing its, a manipulation of big files and stuff like that. If I have a little bit of awareness of how that works, I can make sure that things that I care about being the zippy fastest go onto the SSD and more archive storage goes elsewhere. They had fusion drives actually that did that. They acted as if the SSD was a big cache, and it amazingly sped up that it does a little bit of monitoring in the background for seeing what do you use the most often, and it gradually starts to keep those things on the SSD instead of the spindled hard drive, if you will. And you'll see, wow, this really is opening all the time very quickly now, whereas it used to be, it has to learn a little bit about your behaviors, and it doesn't have quite the isolation that you talked of, Stephen, where the disaster recovery of if I really lost this drive, I could be up and working again. But I don't know, I do striping on my hard drives where I have it actually stored on multiple drives, and so that's my way of doing it. Is a hard drive nowadays, like 8 terabytes costs $120,
right?
And $100 is not no money, it's $100, but 8 terabytes is like, wow, that's an ocean of data, depending on what kinds of things you're doing. Rich media like music and photos and so forth eats it up quickly, but it's been a long time since I overcame my ability to quickly add storage to take care of my acquisitive nature, and that by doing the right thing about how I configure it, I make it so that it's kind of like it can't crash to where I'm going to lose data. It's always going to be relatively quickly recoverable. And doing cloud backups, one of the cool things again about Mac is they have iCloud, and it doesn't just do your documents and your data. It actually is very smart about how, for your contacts, for your calendar, for all kinds of things, it makes it so that it's out in the cloud, and it automatically configures between your various different things, kind of like Google does, and especially for calendar and things like that. So I must admit, I'm a Mac, not a purist, but I have enough things because it's so handy. My watch talks to my phone, talks to my desktop, and I'm always aware of where am I going and what's the address and who do I see when I get to the office and what's the timing of that. And if I'm using it for mapping software, it'll actually give me turn-by-turn directions. Not only I have a GPS that actually does that dedicatedly, but if I use my phone, it'll, you know what I mean? It all coordinates, and you get really spoiled by, wow, they're talking to each other, and it doesn't seem in an intrusive Big Brother way. It seems in a very helpful way, so that's why I don't mind doing it.
So, Alan, when your phone and watch tell you that they will not open your garage door, I will tell you it's time to then go and get. Right. I was going to say. Another little tip, if you're looking for a system, and we've talked about this before too, don't focus so much on getting the newest, greatest CPU. Go for the SSD, go for more memory. That speeds up your system way more.
Absolutely.
And on your Android or your Apple phone or whatever you use there, use the contacts through either iCloud or Microsoft Office or Google, but use the contacts there. I know a lot of people put all the phone numbers on their phone, and the minute they get a new phone, they have to get all of those again.
Start over again.
Yeah,
that's right.
All I do is hook up Google and hook up Outlook, and I get all my contacts sucked down again. So that's another quick tip.
Yeah. In fact, payment systems matter. Like, so far as I'm aware, everything that I have with my phone, not so much my watch, but my phone and my laptop, I have everything I need to do at Amazon or various different sites where I don't have to ever pull out a physical credit card anymore, it looks at my retinas. No, I'm just teasing. It does it where it says, hey, actually, this is a big topic, I guess. Amongst all this, the ease of use always comes with the need for security. So you don't want to make it that you put all things out there and then just open the kimono and everybody can see it. I've got a lot of things now set up where I have second party, third party authorization. I'm trying to think, where if I'm doing something, I have to be able to show by pressing a certain thing on my watch or touching a certain thing on my phone that it is indeed me who requested this transaction because I physically have that. And I guess if they not only broke into my house but stole all my devices, they could simulate being me, but they'd have to know my password. It's just a way of that additional layer is enough to have all this convenience while retaining that you're still the one in control and that there's a level of security that you're not the biggest fool. You're not the one waiting to be fleeced. A lot of crime is opportunistic as opposed to dedicated. And if they're looking around to see whose machine can I get on, how can I lift their passwords, and then what could I do with it? I've had any number of times, sadly, over the last 20 years where I suddenly saw false charges coming to my debit card. Well, it immediately alerted me. I was able to prove that it was indeed not me because this didn't happen. And the resolution of getting those charges removed and they pursuing the bad guys is very, very quick because I have put in that layer of immediate notification and denial that they couldn't buy a Winnebago. They tried to charge a pair of shoes and immediately it was caught, that kind of thing. So that's a little bit still black magic-y, but there's great solutions. And I mentioned as an investor, boy, I'm so happy that there's places out there like Okta and that are trying to do things with. They're aware of the net. They're aware of all the various different actors and what their patterns are about how they do things, and they're helping to prevent cybercrime from even occurring, as opposed to just make right those people who have been harmed by it.
Right.
So
we should do a whole episode of the podcast on security. I don't think we touched on it, but there's a lot nowadays with security.
Yeah. The reason it's especially worth mentioning it now as part of the home office thing is, when I worked at Progressive, we had a whole dedicated staff that made sure people were not penetrating our SQL servers until somebody foolishly took their laptop home, got themselves a worm, and brought it back in. And we had a whole weekend of terrible recovery from how virulent that infection was, where you kind of take on being your own tech support. Often Colleen gets tech support from her company, but oftentimes for just the day-to-day it's like, oh, that's because you lost your connection with your printer and we have to reboot this, we have to make sure that the password is current, and you take on a certain amount of being aware of your configuration, your environment, so that you aren't you don't have all that backup staff that's going to keep you secure. They're not checking every email. You need to make sure that your email provider has really good spam filters and that you don't get overwhelmed because you're just open to the world. So that's some of the part that you take on of being a home office. Okay.
So I'll if you got anything else, let's hit that, but maybe see if we have any questions from the gallery.
In fact, no, I also have a
no. We refuse to do that.
No. What I was going to say is I hope that we've offered some good information. This is a little bit. We tried to run through some cool things. Does anybody have anything they'd like to offer for their experiences or any particular question about what we've said? Thank you again, everybody, for showing up. It's Friday night. This is fun stuff. Yeah.
Home office. Friday.
There we go.
Right before the long weekend. Yeah, nobody wants to think about working from home.
Well, the reason we wanted to do it at 8 o'clock was let's get it done and then have the weekend in front of us.
Right. Well, that's another thing I was going to point out about the great thing about working from home is, especially for me, because I worked with various designers and I would do contract work with them differently. So it would be on a project basis. So I was never beholden to one main company for the longest time. But that also gave me time to do some of my own side things. So if I wanted to, like I said, play music, but also I started writing. So that's now starting to become a part of my business and money earning thing. I've also been working on some games. So if I need a break from a database, I pull up my software and I can work on some cards or rules for the game. And you do investing. There's just multiple streams that you can do from home to earn money. Fiverr. I've
right.
got a gig up on
Depending on your
Fiverr.
frame of mind and stuff like that.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah. So that's another benefit of working from home if you're disciplined enough to be able to follow through with this stuff.
Yeah. I will throw this out because I mentioned kind of earlier. So it's important to worry about ergonomics. You know, if you really are going to be sitting at a certain desk for a length of time, you want to make sure that you've read something about ergonomics. You know, feet flat on the floor. You know, things at a right angle where your elbows are. You don't want to be overreaching. You don't want to be slouching. You know, all that kind of stuff. I, for the first time in my life, actually had some what I thought was RSI pain in my right forearm. And it's like, oh no, am I really getting, you know, carpal tunnel or anything? It turns out that I actually, I'm having my brachial plexus is tight and my neck, and they are radiating outwards to cause me pain down here, but that's not really where the nerve or the muscle difficulty is. It's because I don't have perfect posture, even though I try to maintain it, and because as you get older, you just kind of like lose some lubricants. You lose some, you know what I mean? Even though I regularly stretch myself a little bit. So it is, if you're going to be anywhere near working long term, you want to look into ergonomics and make sure that your monitor is where your eyes are going to go to it naturally, a little bit below your line of sight, and that your keyboard and your mouse are where you have it. Put it in a tray if it's important to keep it at a certain level. There's, you know, go to ergonomics, Google that up, and it will tell you a whole bunch of, if you do these things, you will forestall all kinds of unnecessary pain and limitation over the course of time. So
yeah.
Okay.
So Alan.
Yes.
You mentioned that you use Mac Minis. Have you considered upgrading the Mac Mini to the new Apple M1 processor?
You know what? I did. As of December, I have an M1. I regularly go to the Worldwide Developer Conference this last year, and this year will be virtual, but they touted it. They talked all about the improvements to memory handling, neural engine, all kinds of great technology, and getting off of the Intel standard for all the right reasons. Intel is very powerful, but Apple was doing different things. So I don't usually buy bleeding edge technology because I kind of want everybody else to be the ones that have the crashes and have those difficulties. But it was just such a persuasive case for, boy, 1 minute. The Mac Mini is wonderful. It has all the power in a box the size of like a cigar box. You get to retain all of your peripherals, your monitors, your keyboard, mouse, your CD drive, all your hard drives, and just hook them back up to this new guy, but you've replaced the brains of the operation, if you will. So there were some growing pains. I had some regular crashes when I first got it, but it really is faster, better, stronger in every way than my old Mac was, and now I have that one as a server. I keep experimenting. I kind of kept it as a, you know, I wanted to be able to fall back to it. I've never done that. I never had to, but it's still, I had my old Mac Mini tricked out with like tons of memory, a nice 2 SSDs, that kind of thing. So I've repurposed it because I also wanted to get into that mindset of, it's not only me as a user, if I was to run a server, what would be the mindset that I go into to make sure that Colleen and I can both get to our email. Anyway, I kind of wanted to have that ability to learn those other things. Having said that, the M2 is about to come out. The Worldwide Developer Conference for Mac this year is like 7 to 11, June 7 to 11. And, you know, the M1 Plus, the M2 is coming out, and I'm pretty sure it's not, boy, it's like so cheap for what you get. A base model is like $999, and again, $1,000 is nothing to sneeze at. But for something that I do 8 to 10 hours a day, to be able to get 30%, 50% greater productivity, my valuable time for $1,000, and then if I add some memory and hard drive, like Stephen talked about, maybe it's $1,300 or $1,500. It's absolutely worth it to me. And so I save my shekels, knowing that I'm going to want to get this for Christmas. You know what I mean? As soon as it's available, it's probably going to be November, December for the Christmas buying season. And I hardly ever have replaced a computer so quickly. I usually get 3, 5, 7 years out of a computer because I get it set up just like I like it, and I buy it powerful from the start so it doesn't deteriorate over the course of time. But boy, that whole sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. It's getting more and more magical as they do cooler and cooler things with artificial intelligence, with graphics handling. Like, it's just amazing. It's just amazing what they can do in something that's like 8 inches by 8 inches by 2 inches tall. It's not. I grew up going
That's
to
what she
school at
said.
University of Illinois, where they had the computers like buried under the cornfields with all the air conditioning running. You know, the old Iliac and ENIAC were just these airplane hangars full of computer. And nowadays, as you know, you have more power in your smartphone than you had in the Apollo mission that made it to the moon. So,
you know, Alan, you keep saying M2, and I keep thinking you're talking about BMW, because that's one of the yeah, M2.
I am not a BMW
M3.
guy. I had no idea that I was cross-pollinating there. That's funny.
Okay. But a Mac in a BMW would be cool, though. An M2 in an M2 would be cool.
You know, the fact that, and we haven't talked about this, you know, Mac's Apple continues to like work its way into other parts of your life. So the Apple TV box competes with Roku and various other DVRs, and CarPlay competes with any number of dedicated systems in other cars. Again, it's very, very cool to be able to get into your car and have it be like, you talk to the car saying, hey, call Colleen, and it asks you at home or at work. And then you know what I mean? Their car is now a computer, a rolling computer.
I can't open the garage door, Al.
Well, you know, I'm worried about that it's become more and more dependent on this, that we're going to get like the white event. We're going to have a huge, you know, electro burst, and everything's going to go down. There's been a number of science fiction series about that, right? Where suddenly we are without our technology, and yet, while I got it, I'm going to push it.
So if we create our robots to be that smart, wouldn't they like put shielding in place for themselves?
Yeah, you know, it's I think
Barry's got a question.
There we go, yeah. Barry.
This conversation reminds me when I was just a little kid. I was homesick one day, and my mother brought me a bunch of comic books, and one of them's one she bought, I wish I had saved it, was the very, very first edition of Mad. Wow. And there was an article in that very, very first edition of Mad. It takes place about the year 3000 or so. What happens when the machine that fixes all the machines breaks? And that's kind of where we're going now.
Actually, I think that it's just the opposite of that. I think that there's so much technology out there now, and that the future is here. 2100 is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. I think that the desire for all the world to get these amazing things of communication, of commerce, of medicine, that the United States and the first world, if you will, is just like, maybe we're the precursor, we're the tip of the iceberg, but there's all this wonderful push to acquire and perfect. So like, I don't know, I've seen a number of documentaries about in the middle of the Brazilian, what are they called? Not barrio, you know, the areas where it's just like people are living on,
I think.
Favela. Thank you very much, Barry. All I had to do was ask Menson's, and people will give me the answer. Thank you so much.
I'll send you my bill later.
There we go. Exactly. You know, they have this thing that just looks like people living on top of each other, as if in squalor, but they all have Wi-Fi. They all have cell phones. They have Mercado Libre, that they don't even have to have banks anymore. Everybody has the ability to do commerce just by having that cell phone. And so, you know, when all the Scandinavian countries, why did they take the lead in development of cell phone technology? Well, because they lived in rocky places that you couldn't bury copper in the ground anywhere near as easily as we did all around the United States. And so I think you're going to see that there's going to be amazing hopfrogging and adoption of technology, and that I think we're not going to get to where we're ever going to let it break. We're going to become pretty addicted and pretty defensive about not letting that, and pretty ingenious about making it so that this can work anywhere. It can work with a little solar panel in the middle of the African desert. It can work off, you know what I mean? We're going to get new power sources and new, I am unfailingly optimistic about, I don't think technology is going to weaken us. I think that it's going to enable all kinds of wonderful things.
I remember, I think we're, most of us anyway, are old enough to remember Dick Tracy's two-way wrist
Two-way
radio.
wrist radio, exactly.
I got that now with my Apple Watch.
Yeah.
I can make phone calls on it.
You're exactly right.
And
exactly.
what you were saying, Alan, about the technology in other countries, there are countries that are like totally leapfrogging us, that are totally bypassing desktop computers and laptops. Everybody's getting tablets and phones and watches, and they are literally running businesses and their lives off of these technologies, and they are getting ahead of us. In these certain mobile technologies and things like that. So
exactly.
It's something to watch over the next couple of years.
Especially, I try to be a child in terms of having that childlike curiosity and playfulness when you see that children really are given phones, tablets, they're fearless about what they'll try. They immediately discover things that the developers never anticipated that they would. And you put that all around the world, you're going to see like the vast population centers, China, India, Nigeria, the Malaysia. You're going to see kids growing up with technology from like the moment they totter out of their crib. They're going to be doing just amazing things with interconnectivity. And I don't know, I'm really looking forward to what the world transforms into when it isn't technocrats.
And that's going to be my argument.
1,000 points of light. Yeah.
Kids being born now in 25 years, someone will say, hey, come work for me for minimum wage or even double minimum wage, and the kids are going to be like, why? I've been making money from my phone for 10 years and I can do it from my bed. Why do I have to come into your office work? That's like a scenario we're going to see.
I think so. I think, and they keep doing studies to see, because there's all kinds of over optimism in my case or over pessimism in other cases. Like, is it affecting our attention span? Is it affecting our ability to interact?
Wait, what were you talking about? Sorry,
I was just checking my phone real quick. It's I think that there's something to that we're getting more bursty in our information and in our speaking patterns, and that the ability to really concentrate, I think that maybe some people will still retain that ability, but others, the ones that are more easily distractible, it'll worsen that. And so we're going to have a little bit of, I don't know, some comeuppances with, we didn't realize how social media was, it's going to be everybody being able to connect and share information. Hey, the internet is great. And then you find out it's all a fantastic propaganda engine as well. You know what I mean? That there's always going to be the good and the bad, and that we get to decide as a society, are we going to let that all happen? Are we going to...
Does that mean... We're the ugly,
and in fact, that the ability to like make a reference, will everybody try to get it? Are they going to retain things in memory? Or are they just going to say, why would I have to know that? I can look it up in 3 seconds. Already there's a weirdness about if you're I don't know, I retain everything. I'm a weird trivia head. And yet, I don't know that that's being acknowledged as worthwhile. I think it still matters that you have information at your fingertips, in your head, as opposed to at your fingertips in your hand. The way you make, this is far afield from the home office discussion, I guess, but some part of, like, the more you immerse yourself in multiple disciplines, the more you find consilience, the ability to see how things are interconnected. And home offices might isolate you, but social media saves you from that. And depending on what kinds of things you put into your life, it's really important to have not silo ourselves and over specialize. Heinlein has a great thing about, specialization is for insects, it's not for human beings. One of the things you have to worry about when you isolate yourself is that you don't get happy there, that you should still surprise yourself, that you should still interact with people that make you a little bit uncomfortable, because there's growth on the edges of that. A lot of psychology will tell you that's how you grow, is that feeling of discomfort, not that feeling of, I know everything about this situation and I'm the master of, you know what I mean? You get complacent, I guess, or something. I'm sure there are psychologists that can tell you the reality of what I just said, that I just burbled out in 30 seconds, something that's much deeper, and yet something that we all have to worry about. People who are raising kids in this next generation, and what kids are they going to raise, and how are we dealing with, I am always technical support for my parents, and they're not scared, but they sure aren't as immediately happy familiar with technology as I am, or as our succeeding generations are. And so there's all kinds of, I guess, thought that's being put into what's the right combination of power and ease of use, so that anybody can make use of it, but you also have an expert mode that the real deep people can do amazing things with it. I like that attitude of it's extensible. It's got depth to it that it doesn't stop you from using it, but if you go exploring, you'll find the depth. That really has been a long-standing attitude that Apple has had with how it builds its products. They're elegant. They surprise you in a pleasant way, not an unpleasant way. Oh, well.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, as Steve and I are really good at getting it talking, other comments or questions or other things from our wonderful audience? Thank you again so much, everybody, for joining us. Hands? Oops. There's lots of other cool stuff going on this weekend if you look at the schedule too. So thank you, John and Jerry, for bringing us along.
I was just going to ask you, the thing with computers though is they're not Model Ts. People are not able to just take them apart and put them back together. They have to have the discrete parts, and the discrete parts can't be handmade. They have to be manufactured.
So that's true to a certain extent, but not entirely. By that meaning, there's like when Stephen and I talk about, you can upgrade a hard drive in your system relatively easily just by making sure that you have the right pin connector and the right rails that it goes in. And it might be you don't take your hard drive apart anymore and make sure that it's vacuum sealed correctly and so forth. But the various different, they've componentized the things that they knew they had to future proof. They had to future accommodate, is a better way of putting it, so that you can add memory, you can add a hard drive, you can add a new keyboard. It might be that when you get to the point of you want to change your entire motherboard and all of what it's capable of, then that's exactly right. You can't really go taking chips off and having to reseal it with thermal paste correctly. It isn't tinkerable like a Model T might be, but I think that there is some accommodation for like the make movement that really want to build the fastest computer they possibly can out of not all parts from one manufacturer, but being able to mix amongst things as long as there's interoperability standards.
But
so
that's even changing though, because like I said, more people are getting used to phones and tablets where you're not changing out anything. Desktops are a dying breed.
You're exactly right.
Right.
Thank you.
You can't build an M2 chip in your garage.
No, I agree. Because magic takes work. Magic takes money. You know what I mean? It's that's I guess.
This is not new, this issue, because in 1975, when I was operating a Borog 6700 mainframe, that machine was huge and was all built with TTL integrated circuits, which is a bunch of transistors creating logic gates inside.
Right.
Already at the time, you couldn't build that chip, but you could build something similar if you use discrete transistors, and you would have something that was like 10 times the size and 50 times the power. But today, with the M1 chip on the new Macs, and now on the iPad Pro, it has 16 billion transistors in that thing.
Right.
So it's not. There is no way. That's the cutting edge of computer science today, and that's a 5 nanometer processor, and TSMC that will make the iPhone 13 processor and the M2. That's a 3 nanometer processor, and IBM is already prototyping 2 nanometers. So there is no way you can do that in your garage or build something.
I think
modules, large modules like Lego stuff, but you cannot get into the thing that has 16 billion transistors.
I think actually there's a few more than 16 billion. I counted them last weekend, and I got a little more than that. Hey,
I'd suggest you get a bigger garage.
Alan, I'm going to have to get off because I got to take kids to work. So
got it.
Good night, everyone. Have a really great weekend.
Exactly. Let's call the session again. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Lonestar Texas. Thank you again, Stephen, for my partner in mirth and merriment. And I hope everybody had a good time and you got something out of this. And I hope you have a wonderful time with the RG for the weekend.
Yes, enjoy.
Okay?
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Relentless Geekery Podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Stephen's conversation on geek topics of the week.